Since Space Engineers 2 released in early access 2 months ago, we've received a lot of teasers of what will be coming to the game in the future. However, I haven't really covered any of them, mainly because 90% of it would just be, oh look, here's a picture of water, oh look, here's a picture of a tree. However, last week, Vertical Slice 1.1 was released, which added the ability to post things to the Steam Workshop, and a bunch of other things that we covered in this video here. However, this update also secretly added some of the things that they've been teasing to the game. They're just disabled by default as they're not finished yet. And luckily for you, I have a way to enable them. The first feature that's hidden in the game files is the new Jetpack boost system. So the way my jetpack currently works in Space Engineers, if I turn it on, you can see I'm flying around and the thruster flames are blue. And at the bottom left, you can see that my maximum speed limit is 20 meters per second. Now if I press shift, it goes orange, and I'm no longer limited by that 20 meters per second speed limit, and I can fly around as fast as I want. If I enable the new jetpack system, I can activate my jetpack as before. I'm still limited to 20 meters per second. However, now if I press shift, you'll see that the screen starts to shake, and then my jetpack turns orange and I start boosting forward. If I do that again, so I'm pressing shift now, you can see the screen shaking, and then it boosts. So the main change is the visual effect of the shaking. It has a brand new sound effect, and also the boost feature now has a wind-up time rather than being instant like it was before. And you can see in the bottom left, as it winds up, a little white box fills up around the hydrogen bar until the boost enables and it turns orange. So presumably this is to indicate that the boost uses more hydrogen, or potentially your jetpack doesn't use hydrogen when you're not boosting. I guess that would kind of make sense, but we'll have to wait and see. The next three changes all kind of grouped together, and these are all to do with the debug gun. So I've currently got the debug gun equipped, and you can see that there's no model. If I come into third person, there's no model. I'm just kind of standing there, and if I look towards this assembler, I just kind of like fire a laser out of a, I think it's supposed to come out of my hand. It looks very unfortunate, I won't lie. And you can see I can shoot a hole in the assembler, but there's not really much impact to it. It just kind of destroys whatever I'm looking at. And also, if I fire it at a voxel, it doesn't do anything to voxels. The debug gun only damages blocks. If I enable the new features, and I switch off my debug gun and switch back, ooh, this is interesting. The debug gun has a brand new model to start with, and it's clearly labelled debug gun on the side. Now, as we mentioned earlier, this isn't finished, as you can tell by the fact that the engineer is not holding the gun correctly and his fingers are facing through the handle. I think this is because the model is scaled up too big. The gun does look much larger than it should. So maybe it's just the wrong size and needs to be shrunk down, but I'm sure Keen will sort that before it releases. If I fire the gun, you can see that the laser now comes out of the end of the gun, as opposed to before, where it came out of my, And also, as I fire, the screen shakes. So it actually feels like you're firing a weapon. And as you just saw there, I blasted a hole in the asteroid. So now the debug gun also destroys voxels, which is very useful. You know, when modding comes out, I bet people are going to try and see how high they can turn up the debug gun and just blast entire asteroids away in a single shot. Yes, yes. I think this has made destruction, like, even more satisfying than it was before. Oh my. Right, we need to move on. If I don't stop now, I will end up using the debug gun for the next 20 minutes and then wondering why this recording's so long. Undo and redo was one of the major features of Space Engineers 2. If you made a mistake, you could just simply undo it. However, there was one notable exception, the paint gun. You couldn't undo it. Well, this feature is now in the code for the game, and it seems to work fine. I can't see any issues with it. So I've painted the entire base red, and now if I undo, it goes back. It just seems to work flawlessly. I wonder what stopped them adding this in the last update. It seems to be perfectly fine. One feature the developers have been talking about a lot is something called inverse kinematics. And I didn't really get what the big deal about this was. But now that we can demo it in game, it's actually really easy to show you how important this is. So you can see we're holding on this engineer here, and you can see his feet are, well, he's not really touching the ground. However, if I turn on inverse kinematics, his feet are now level with the ground. And it goes further than this. So if I take control for a second, you can see that if I walk up, whilst it looks a little bit goofy, my feet are perfectly level on the ground. If I go up here, I get 1 foot on and 1 foot off. Now, whilst it appears my foot has now become part of my leg, again, these features aren't finished. It is an improvement over this, where my foot is floating above the ground. I think we can all agree that this looks better than this. So it'll be a very cool feature when this is finished. And speaking of things that are cool, cable. Before we move on to the next section, I wanted to quickly mention that all the components of Space Engineers 2 are hidden in the files, and I did a whole video where I spawned them in and we spoke about all of them, along with a bunch of other features and secrets that are currently hidden or disabled in the game. So check out that video if you're interested in that. Water is the feature for Space Engineers 2 I'm most excited for, and whilst we get a lot of teasers for it, they're all kind of the same thing. You just shoot a hole in something and some water comes out. Great, I love it. But I've seen it before. Show me something new. And this teaser here is definitely something new. Now, it's very similar to a previous teaser where they remove the dam and then the water flows out, but That teaser is very old, like when water was first being worked on. And this teaser here is much newer. You can see the water looks much better and not like the weird, like jelly it looked like in the previous teaser. And I want to draw your attention to, as the water hits the ship, you can see the foam come off of it and it looks so good. And you can see as the water comes down the hillside, there's foam on the hills and mountains as it crosses over them. And then when it comes over this ridge here, it creates foam over the top. And it just looks good. I'm sorry, I'm such a sucker for water clips. Just the little bits of foam coming over the spikes. And then when we zoom out, the massive amount of water flowing everywhere. And it doesn't seem to impact performance that much. The water is just flowing cleanly out from where the dam was and across this valley. Look at this big foam cascade over here. Oh, it looks so good. I can't wait. Still, my #1 feature for Space Engineers. Look at this ending shot here. Look at this. Perfection. I can't wait to get my hands on this. And if you too can't wait to get your hands on this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel to learn exactly when you can. We've recently been getting teasers for Flora in Space Engineers, so plants, trees and stuff like that. And the first thing they showed us is that there appears to be different types of flora for different biomes. So here it appears to be plants for a desert biome. You can see that we've got a kind of palm tree and some desert shrubs. This one, as you can see on the left, is for a savanna, and you've got these, because of Minecraft I want to say acacia trees, but I'm sure they're not acacia trees. I'm sure that's just a Minecraft thing. You can see the little shrubs, and this tree here appears to have fruit on it. I don't think that's going to be indicative of anything, apart from maybe the ability to plant trees. I can't see them adding food to the game, not at this point anyway. But considering they've drawn focus to it, just maybe keep it in mind for the future. Here they've got some foliage from mountains, and whilst these little plants are cool, one thing I want to draw your attention to, this isn't technically part of the flora. Well, not in the sense of what these screenshots are talking about. But if you zoom in on the mountainside, you can see little bits of moss in the cracks with tiny little plants coming out of them. And I think I'm more excited for this than I am plants. Obviously in Space Engineers 1, mountains are just a big uniform grey texture, not very interesting. But we already know the textures for voxels look much better than their Space Engineers 1 counterparts. But having these little detail like the little plants and moss in between the rocks, it's just going to blow Space Engineers 1 out of the water. They were saying they want everything in Space Engineers 2 to be 10 times better, and this is definitely something that will make planets in Space Engineers 2 10 times better. This teaser here, as they fly up, you'll see that there are lots of trees in the distance, and some of the trees have this wireframe around them, but the trees in the distance do not have this wireframe or texture on it. And that's because these trees aren't real, they're fake trees. You'll notice that there's a million trees here, much more than you would ever see in one location in Space Engineers 1. And they're achieving this with something called billboards, which I kind of understand. And I'm sure at me just saying the words that I don't understand, someone in the comments has already written out a 200-word message about how billboards work. So that's great, you can read their comments so I don't have to Google it and get it wrong. But the point is, it looks like one of the aims of Space Engineers 2 is to use this technology to vastly increase the number of trees and probably other things that you can have in an area without it causing a performance impact. There's also this screenshot here, and as you can see, there's a hell of a lot of trees here, like a ridiculous amount. I'm already thinking of jungle planets, guys. Kashyyyk, Endor, it sounds like planets like that might be possible in Space Engineers 2. This could be a test. It's possible that the trees aren't going to be this dense in Space Engineers 2. But if this is possible, this is going to be so good. And it's also going to completely destroy the ability to drive rovers around planets, isn't it? Oh no, what have I signed up for? This screenshot here just looks beautiful. I can already feel my fans spinning up with all this grass on the screen. And these trees here just look fantastic. This video here was recently released and it shows off the new wind animations they've added to the flora, so you can see that the grass and the trees are moving in the wind. It might be a bit of an extreme example for testing, as they do seem to move around quite erratically. However, as we always say, this stuff is not finished and is not necessarily representative of the final game, but it just looks absolutely beautiful, doesn't it? I feel like every time I see planets in Space Engineers 2, I am absolutely blown away. It's just a massive shame that the YouTube bitrate absolutely destroys this video. Welcome to the section of the video I like to call, here's a bunch of stuff, because here's a lot of things that don't really fit into a category together. For example, this screenshot here is of an NPC. It's the only screenshot we have of an NPC. And it's just a model, and I would probably think it wasn't coloured in if it wasn't for the little bit of red down here. So you can see that it's black, and it has a smaller backpack than we do. Presumably this is also a jetpack. It seems to be a bit slimmer than our engineer actually, or less bulky, and the helmet design is different with the pipes here. Can't really glean anything from this. I guess that makes sense because NPCs aren't coming out for at least a year, but probably more like 2. But it is cool to see that they've done some work on them, so presumably they've begun at least the initial stages of development of NPCs. This block here is called the Gear Forge, and this is a block that we've been getting quite a few screenshots for recently. We have this one, which I briefly touched on in a previous video, and there's also this one here, where you can see that there are multiple Gear Forges in a row. At this current time, I believe that the Gear Forge is a block that crafts gear, as in stuff that we equip, like welders, grinders, drills, oxygen tanks, and it's probably best indicated by the fact that there is a 3D printer in here. And also over here there appears to be spoons, I think? That's definitely a spoon, right? Or is it like tongs? I don't know, I've been staring at this for like 5 minutes now. I've cut it out of the video, obviously. And I'm like, spoons or tongs? Spoons or tongs? I'm like, what are you doing with your life, Sarah? This video here shows off the block fracturing system in Space Engineers 2. However, what's interesting is that this is the hydrogen tank, and we haven't seen the hydrogen tank yet. And this is a completely new design compared to Space Engineers 1. It's kind of reminiscent of the spherical hydrogen tank that we have in Space Engineers 1, but it's also long, like the base game hydrogen tank is. It also appears to have buttons at the bottom here. Those are buttons, right? It's got like a yellow button and a red button. Very interesting. In the next update for Space Engineers 2, there's going to be a new feature added called target-based gyro, which overhauls the way you fly ships. It's demonstrated in this teaser here, and it's a new way of controlling the rotation of your ships, where you move the mouse, and rather than your ship immediately moving a small amount, it will instead move your camera, and then the ship will turn at the maximum speed of your gyros to meet where your camera has moved to. Currently in Space Engineers 1 and 2, you have to keep picking up your mouse and dragging it over and over to turn your ships if you have low gyro power or they're just really large, and that's really awkward to do. But with this, you can turn your mouse once, and then your ship turns as fast as it can to reach the direction you want to face. I hope that makes sense. I've re-recorded that like 20 times. This seems like it would be a much smoother and more intuitive way to fly your ship, but I think I'll need to get my hands on it first before I make judgment. One thing you'll have also noticed during this clip is the camera. More specifically, at no point during this clip does the camera get stuck inside the ship or force you into the cockpit. The camera automatically adjusts to fit into the gap it's flying into, and then stay in a position where you can still see the ship in third person, which looks really good, really cinematic. And also I'm sure it'll be much better for when you're playing the game as well, as there's nothing more jarring than when you're flying along and you fly near something and then the camera just snaps into a different location, be that inside the cockpit of your ship or just anywhere you're not expecting. Hopefully these camera changes will also be part of the next update, alongside the target-based gyro. In Space Engineers 2, we know to start with that we're getting 3 planets that exist in a binary star system. If you want to learn more about this new solar system, check out this video here where I go into it in depth. But the reason I'm bringing this up is at the centre of this new star system will be a brown dwarf star called Delphos, and we've recently been shown the first in-game render of that. Now, I'm hoping, and it appears from this that it might be possible, that Delphos is a physical object within Space Engineers 2 that you can fly to. Now, the loading screens for Space Engineers 2 have lore on them, and some of this lore seems to indicate that there's some sort of mystery near and around Delphos. So with that in mind, and the fact that the render appears to be 3D, it seems likely that it'll be a physical object in our new star system. Obviously, there's no effects on this. This is just what the sphere looks like. I'm sure there'll be some sort of like, I want to say atmospheric, but it's not atmospheric because it's a star. There'll be some sort of like mist or glow around it, I'm sure. And judging by the blender render on the side, it appears it's going to have swirling textures in it as well, potentially. It was recently announced that Space Engineers 2 will be receiving weekly updates as of next Thursday, and that these weekly updates will be focused on adding new blocks to the game. So, as always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want to keep up to date with everything coming to Space Engineers 1 and 2. And additionally, if you want to go the extra mile that the people on the left have, you can become a supporter with the button below the video. And so, you clicked it.